Hello everyone, this is MJ with Big Mind. In today's video, we're going to talk about smoke testing with CAEPE. CAEPE is a continuous deployment platform built for Kubernetes, and it helps you deploy your applications in Kubernetes with confidence. In this specific video, we're going to talk about smoke testing. So smoke testing is the idea that you would take an existing workload and deploy it to a brand new cluster, whether that's a cluster running on a new provider or a new version of Kubernetes. As you may know, Kubernetes moves at a pretty rapid pace in terms of its deployment schedule, and so they're updating the product fairly often, and they're often breaking changes within those new versions of Kubernetes. There's also differences between the various cloud providers and their implementations of Kubernetes, so if you are running the same version, it may not work the same in every cloud provider. That's where smoke testing comes in. Smoke testing will allow you to take a backup of your existing cluster, let's say US East 1 EKS, take a snapshot of all the data that's in there, push that to S3, and then automatically deploy that to your new target cluster, in this case, AKS, and then run your tests against that new cluster to make sure that everything that was running in your production workload here is now able to run in your production workload over here just the same. So we're going to dive in and take a look at that. Here we are in the CAEPE UI, and as you can see, we're at the dashboard page, and this gives you a great high-level overview of everything that's going on in your cluster, including the clusters, deployments, and schedules that you see here, as well as some additional information about all of the different pieces running in all of the different clusters that are attached to CAEPE. In this video, we are talking about smoke testing, so let's come down here and take a look at what we have. You can see here that there are a number of different pieces of information on this page about smoke testing. And first thing we're going to do is come in here and define a snapshot. So this is a snapshot that we're going to take of our actual live running website here on our Smoke Amazon cluster. This is our EKS cluster, and it's running a copy of our full production website with all the data that is necessary. The target we're pushing to is actually our Azure cluster, our AKS cluster, and this doesn't have anything running there right now. So we will go ahead and give this a name. Prod EKS to AKS, because we're going from our production EKS cluster to an AKS cluster to do our smoke test. And we will then choose the proper cluster to pull from, in this case, prod AWS. Here you can choose a number of namespaces, but in this case, we will just use our ecom prod namespace. And you can also choose certain resources out of that namespace if you like, but we're going to grab all the resources available in there. Lastly, we'll choose an S3 bucket snapshot location to back all of this data up to, and that is predefined within the UI here. And we'll go ahead and install our CAEPE components. Next, we will be able to do some post-snapshot deployment activities. So you could come in here and define some sort of test run that automatically runs when the cluster is done building. And you could even delete the snapshot instance or remove the snapshot from the smoke test cluster when these tests run successfully. But we'll just be doing a manual verification for this test. Next, you can also create a snapshot with data. And lastly, we will need to choose a cluster to deploy to. So we'll choose our Smoke Azure cluster or our AKS cluster to deploy to. And one more option is that if this cluster that's targeted had a limited bandwidth, then you could actually go ahead and check to see, based on what CAEPE knows about that cluster and about what you're actually deploying, about how long this will take to actually deploy. So we'll go ahead and say define snapshot now and go back to our snapshots page. You can now see that there's a snapshot definition here. If we come in, we can click on view and see all the information that we just filled in for the snapshot. The last thing to do is to actually take the snapshot and deploy to the new cluster. So we'll go ahead and click on this button. Now you can save this snapshot definition, and you could choose in a future deployment to actually deploy to a different cluster. But in this case, we're going to leave the default cluster selected here. So we'll choose create snapshot and deploy. And now the action is in progress and it's running. So if we come back to our smoke test page and drill down in definitions, you can see that the initial portion of this production snapshot is actually up and going and has completed successfully. And now it's just running the jobs in the background to actually capture all that data from this cluster running here and push it over to this cluster here. We'll just come back here in a few minutes and we will see if this cluster deployment actually worked and if our snapshot data was actually successfully deployed to this new target cluster. One thing to note is that CAEPE is intended to integrate alongside your other enterprise-grade management tools that you use when managing Kubernetes. In this case, we're using Rancher to manage all of our Kubernetes clusters, and I was watching this to make sure that all of our pods and deployments went successfully to our Smoke Azure cluster. And now if we come back to this Smoke Azure page, which I have not refreshed yet, you can see the 404 here from when there was nothing deployed. If I refresh, you can now see that we have an identical copy that was running on the original Smoke Amazon deployment. So hopefully that gives you a bit of information about how important smoke testing is and how you can easily perform that with CAEPE. Thanks and have a good one.